So on screen right now is a screenshot directly from the map toolkit. This is actual results from one of my clients here. I blanked out the server names there to protect the innocent. But what we can see here is there's some really important stuff that we need to know in terms of consolidation, right? Because you got server A, you got server B, you got server C, but do you know how busy each of those servers are? If you consolidate server A and C together, is that going to be too busy on a single server? Are they good candidates for virtualization in the first place? You may or may not know these things. So this is where the map toolkit really, really shines. So here we can see average CPU utilization, average memory utilization, average network utilization, disk, and then finally that last column on the right, IOPS, the disk I/O per second. That one's really, really important to note because that kind of differentiates, the extremely busy servers versus the ones that are doing nothing. So let me see. Oh, there we go. So here you can see I've got one that average CPU utilization is less than 2%. And look at the memory usage, less than 2, and IOPS are 17. This is, all these collections here are over a 4-week period. So I've got a pretty good baseline here, right? The map toolkit, Microsoft is going to have you run it if you're going to be doing any sort of licensing. If you're switching over to 2012 licensing, which you will be if you're buying licenses anytime soon, they'll actually have you run the map toolkit against your environment because that actually gives you a bunch of other stuff. But from a performance metrics standpoint, they recommend you run it a minimum of 3 weeks, and that's basically so you can make sure you capture things like month-end processing, stuff like that. So you can run it a minimum. They recommend you run it a minimum of 3, run it as long as you want. It's kind of nice because you can start and stop the collections and just append your resources. So it's just kind of cool. I'm going to flip over real quick because I have some other outputs in the map toolkit that are just really interesting. So this folder contains all sorts of different outputs that the map toolkit can provide you. We're going to focus on the SQL Server ones, though. So I'm going to open the SQL Server assessment. And again, these documents are all automatically generated by the map toolkit, and it's free, and it's really, really cool tool. So when this thing opens here, we're going to take a look at it, and we're going to see all the kinds of information that this thing can give you insights into your SQL Server. So here you can see the SQL Server version, service pack level. You can see additions, which becomes very important if you're talking about consolidating stuff together. Are you consolidating 2 standards into an enterprise, whatnot? Are they clustered? I didn't go into it, but if you have a current physical box and it's clustered, you probably don't want to virtualize it that way. Just because while you can virtualize, while you can create a cluster in a virtualized environment, it's often more trouble than it's worth because clustering has its own set of complexities, and if you try to virtualize on top of that, it's going to be really, really tough. If you want to take on that challenge, go for it. I've seen people cluster virtual servers, but I'm just giving you a heads up that that can be a little bit crazy. So here we see the operating system, service pack levels, but down here is where is the information that you're going to need. You have operating system architecture, but the processors. Now, for those that may not be familiar, SQL Server 2012 has changed over to a per processor or per core licensing model, right? So up until now, we've been able to purchase licenses for SQL Server based on the processor. We didn't care about the number of cores. Now we do. So what the map toolkit will actually give you is a good outlay of what you have out there. So when you're planning out your Microsoft licensing agreements for now and for future purposes, you're going to want to run the map toolkit and find out, okay, what do I have out there? Now, you'll notice 2 different columns, number of cores and number of logical processors. Number of logical processors means how many the operating system actually sees, because if you have hyper-threading enabled, you're going to see double the number over here than actual cores. All right, so just be aware of that. So the one you want to focus on in regards to licensing is number of cores here. This also becomes important because when we're talking about virtualizing in the new world, in the new licensing world, if you want to license a VM with SQL Server 2012, you have to buy a minimum of four cores for that one VM. Even if you build the VM with 2 virtual processors, like I talked about earlier, you're still buying the license for four virtual processors. I am not an expert on Microsoft licensing. Nobody on the internet, unless they are a Microsoft licensing rep, is an expert on it. The only person who can tell you what you need and what can give you the correct information about licensing is your local Microsoft rep. And I got to stress that because people go out on the internet, there's bad information thrown around all the time, except, of course, for my presentation, right? Because I'm awesome and I'm giving you the truth. But you want to make sure that you talk to your local rep about proper licensing. Now, I keep forgetting that I haven't updated this deck, and I've got a few more minutes. I'm going to flip over to another deck real quick that has another tool that you're going to want to use. In addition to the map toolkit, and that is the SQL Server Upgrade Advisor. And this is another free tool available from Microsoft. So just go out and Bing or Google, whatever you want, SQL Server feature packs. And there's an Upgrade Advisor available for 2008 R2 and one for 2012. There's actually Upgrade Advisors for lower versions as well, but we probably don't want to be using that. Again, it's free. And what the Upgrade Advisor does is it scans your existing databases and it does call-outs onto stuff that may break if you're bringing it up from a lower version. Now, it's kind of hard to see here, but this output gives you some really cool stuff. So this one here is one of the most important ones in my opinion. So it's terrible to see the text there, but it says outer join operator star equals and equal star are not supported in 9.0 or later compatibility mode. So how does that know that? Well, what the Upgrade Advisor does is it scans all your objects in your database and it looks at the code, and if it sees deprecated syntax like that, it does a call out. Now, on the next screen, I show it a little bit better, but these plus signs, if you have something here that gets called out, you hit that plus sign and then there's a little link that says View Details, and it actually gives you a nice little checklist of the different items that are affected by what's being called out.